Nats Chat is brought to you by Walters. Check out the self-pour beer wall at Walters. Walters is located across the street from Nationals Park. Walters is the best sports bar in Navy Yard.
Walters is your spot for all of the NBA playoffs.
Pitch. Swinging a fly ball deep left field toward the corner. Chasing McCutchen. He's not going to get it. It's down for a hit. McCutchen cuts it off on the warning track. Hernandez scores. Franco dashes into third. And in at second with another RBI double is Lane Thomas. Thomas picks up his second RBI of the game and his 15th of the season. 2-1 delivery from Suter is lined to left field toward the line. That's going to be a base hit. McCutchen angles to cut it off on the warning track. Strange-Gordon will score. Hernandez for third. He'll stop there. And in at second with an RBI double is Keibert Ruiz. Ruiz stays hot, and so do the Nationals in this inning. 6 consecutive hits, and they lead this ball game 6-0.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Monday, May 23rd, 2022, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at American Family Field in Milwaukee. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Well, sometimes in life, the why behind the what does not matter. It's just the what that matters. And on Sunday, the what was the Nats offense waking up and busting out. Davey Martinez changed the Nats lineup for this game in a pretty significant way. Moved Keibert Ruiz up to the number 2 spot, Juan Soto to the number 3 spot. Whether the lineup changes in relation to the Nats offense doing well were causation or just correlation, the bottom line is this. The Nats offense did well. Just 1 run total over the first 2 games in the series, but the Nats on Sunday afternoon scored 8 runs, an 8-2 win at the Brewers to avoid a 3-game sweep and improve to 14-28 on the season. You know, Mark, knowing Davey as we do, we know how much he likes to stick with a lineup off and having a good game. I would say the safest bet on the planet right now is that Keibert Ruiz on Monday night will bat second. Juan Soto on Monday night will be batting third.
I would agree with you on that, Al, and I'll just tell you, what I wrote in my game story, because I think it applies in this time, and I know you'll enjoy the reference. Sometimes when you keep doing something and it's not working, you're just left with one choice. Do the opposite. And as George Costanza famously found out, if every instinct you've ever had has been wrong, then the opposite must be right. And on this day, whether it means anything in the big picture or not, who knows? But on this day, the opposite really did work for them. Savor it, enjoy it, keep riding it as long as it works. Maybe it won't, but for now, hey, it worked.
14 hits for the Nats on Sunday afternoon to go with a walk. 6 for 12 with runners in scoring position. We had a 6-run 4th inning that was something else. 8 consecutive Nats getting a hit before an out was recorded. Multiple bunt RBI singles. We had a hit and run. By the way, only the Nats could have a 6-run inning without a homer, okay? And that's what that was. Singles and doubles and 2 bunt singles in that inning. That was typical 2022 Nats. But hey, a 6-run inning is a 6-run inning. And, this maddening thing with the Nats this season continues, Mark. When they lose, they barely score. When they win, they score in bunches. The Nats now, in 7 of their last 8 wins, have scored at least 7 runs. Conversely, they've scored 2 runs or less in each of the team's previous 8 losses. It really is nuts. The offense is either really bad or really good, but when it's really good, you're like, why can't we see this more often? What we saw on Sunday, why can't we see that more often?
It is mind-boggling how this keeps happening like this, because you're right. It's not like we look at this and say, this is just a terrible lineup and they never do anything, because that's not true. Essentially 1 out of every 3 games, which is how many they're winning right now, the offense looks really productive. Maybe not in the power department, but they do string together hits like we saw in this case, and they execute in the right situations in that. And then on 2 out of 3 nights, it's like they can't do anything right. And I do wonder if, as you were pointing out, there were no home runs in that 6-run rally. If that maybe has a little bit something to do with it. It's hard, as we've discussed, to consistently string together that many hits to score runs. So maybe it only happens once every 3 days. And if you do have a team that hits for a little bit more power, that can compensate for other stuff. You can score runs in bunches on only a couple of hits in those cases, as opposed to, in this case, 8 hits in 1 inning. So maybe that has a little bit something to do with it, the lack of power. But they do need to find some way. They don't have to have a great lineup night in and night out, but you got to give yourself a chance. You got to try to win some games scoring like 4 runs, which it seems like they never do. They're either way above it or way below it. We'll see. Some of it might have to do with the pitching they're facing, but you got to find a way to at least give your pitching staff a chance, because too many nights it almost hasn't mattered how the pitchers have done because they just don't score more than a run or two.
Yeah, like your average runs per game is nice, but those 14 run outputs and 13 run outputs skew things. Like, it would be much nicer if it was just more of a steady Eddie, 5 runs a game. Like, that would be beautiful. But the Nats have had a hard time doing that. But they were really good offensively on Sunday afternoon. It's interesting. You had 5 Nats each having at least 2 hits on Sunday afternoon. Nobody really had like a monster game, but certainly multiple Nats had good games. And if you take a step back, the offensive standout for the Nats in this series ended up being Lane Thomas. Who knows what this will lead to, but this kind of felt like Lane Thomas's weekend in much the same way that the series at San Francisco felt like Victor Robles' weekend. Now, that hasn't turned out to mean much. And interestingly, Victor only started 1 game in this series, but Lane Thomas on Sunday afternoon was back out there as a Nats starting center fielder and number 8 batter, 2 for 4 with 2 RBI doubles. He had a Nats 1-run second, had a 2-out opposite field RBI double. Got some help from the Brewers right fielder Hunter Renfroe, who came in on the ball, and the ball went over Renfroe's head, but the double put the Nats up 1-0. And then Thomas in the Nats 6-run fourth, an RBI double to left field for a 3-0 Nats lead. Lane Thomas this weekend hit for the cycle. He had the triple on Friday night. He had a homer and a single on Saturday night, and he had 2 doubles on Sunday afternoon. This really felt like the Lane Thomas of 2021 on display over the weekend.
If only that triple had just been a triple and nothing else happened on the back end of the play. But we don't have to get into that one again. It was a really good series for him, hitting the ball with some authority. One of the few guys who was hitting for power. And when you said earlier that you would bet the house on seeing the same lineup again on Monday, I agree as far as the Ruiz 2, Soto 3. I would not be surprised with a left-hander for the Dodgers, both on Monday and on Wednesday scheduled. I would not be surprised if Lane Thomas actually hits leadoff those 2 days. This is another one of those things that we've talked about. Are there any other looks that Davey could put together? And I know that flip-flopping, moving Soto down and maybe moving Ruiz up was one of the things he was considering. I think moving Thomas up against lefties in particular is something that he does want to consider because he had so much success there last year. And you're right, this weekend, that looked like 2021 Lane Thomas. Who knows if he can sustain that or not? But I think based on what we did see from him last year and what we're not seeing from others in the bigger picture this year, I don't think there's any harm in getting another good look at him and trying to gather some more information and try to draw a conclusion of, is there more to him? Is the guy we saw last year something that can come out on a more regular basis? Or is he really just destined to be a backup outfielder? They don't know the answer to that, but I think it's time to start finding out something because you can see there's something there. When he gets on a roll, when he plays consistently, there has been some success.
Yeah, Lane Thomas last season, 206 plate appearances, OPS plus of 134. I mean, that's quite good. 100 is league average. He was at 134 over his time with the Nats at the major league level last season. So with Keibert Ruiz, I mean, this really was the big change in the lineup. Keibert Ruiz, who was batted, number 5, number 6, number 7 this year, vaulting up to that number 2 spot. It's not without logic. Keibert Ruiz now this season has an on-base percentage of .351, so it's not like some nutso thing that Davey did in doing this. Ruiz on Sunday afternoon, 1 for 5 with an RBI double. He in the 6-run fourth had an RBI double to left field to put the Nats up 6-0. Ruiz on Saturday night got on base 3 times. He went 2 for 3 with 2 singles and a walk. What did Davey have to say about why specifically he did what he did with Keibert Ruiz, moving him up to that 2 spot?
Yeah, so I actually thought that, as much as everyone was going to make a bigger deal out of Soto being moved down to the 3 spot, which, by the way, we've discussed as well in the last few weeks, and maybe there's a way to try to make a difference there. I thought that Ruiz hitting second was the bigger deal because that is an explicit display of confidence that Davey is showing in a young catcher to put him into the primo spot, the spot that I think we have to acknowledge going into this season, Davey and the people who help him formulate these things is essentially saying is the most important spot in your lineup. If you're going to hit Juan Soto second, you're saying that is the most important spot in the lineup. And now he's decided to put Keibert Ruiz there. What he's done here lately, going into the game, he was hitting .370 with a .482 on base percentage and .522 slugging percentage in the month of May. That's really good. He had reached base in 8 of his last 9 plate appearances and then got on base, twice more, although once was on an error in this game. So you're seeing a guy who's good at making contact, as we've discussed. He is also starting to draw his walks. We haven't seen a lot of power from him, but he has the ability to hit for doubles. And I think the feeling there was get two guys who can maybe get on base for Soto. Yes, he sometimes is hitting with runners in scoring position, and he's really struggled this year, but maybe give him two opportunities. Maybe you get multiple guys in scoring position for him, and you saw it pay off at least once in this game. Soto had a 2-run single. So I've thought all along that Ruiz's skills offensively could translate to being a number 2 or number 5 hitter, somewhere in the top half of a lineup. I'll be curious to see where they go with this, but I think there is logic behind it. It's not just we're going to pick names out of a hat and just come up with somebody who's hot right now. I think there is logic in the type of hitter that Ruiz is to think that he could be a number 2 batter.
Yeah, and he gets on base. I mean, if you just, to me, you can simplify lineup construction to just get your best guys up as often as possible. With that on base percentage, he's been one of their better hitters so far this season. Now, is he a number 2 batter? No, but things are a little weird right now with this lineup, as Juan Soto said of himself on Saturday night. So give it a shot. I mean, look, you could argue it makes more sense than Cesar Hernandez batting first, Keibert Ruiz batting second with the OBP that Ruiz has put forth so far this year.
Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice that you were looking in my direction.
Oh, yes, I was. You just ordered the same exact lunch as me.
My name is George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents.
I'm Victoria. Hi.
Are you a law firm partner looking for a better situation for your practice and a blockbuster contract worthy of Juan Soto? If so, you should call Mason Kalfas of Zenith Legal in Washington, D.C. He works with law firms and lawyers on finding the perfect match. No platoons, just superstars. Some lawyers switch firms because of conflict. Some lawyers switch firms for a better platform for their practice. And some lawyers switch firms for more money. You need the Scott Boras of legal headhunters working for you, and that's Mason. Mason will work with you to find a better fit for your practice and ultimately the best deal for you and your entire team. Call him today at 202-486-3535 or check out his website, zenithlegal.com. This is an unprecedented time in the legal market, and many top firms are looking to expand. Call Mason today. Zenith Legal also works with associates and distinguishes itself on personal service. Zenith Legal doesn't just spam resumes out to law firms. Zenith Legal talks to the right people and gets your resume in front of the decision makers who matter. Whether you are a Rainmaker partner or a mid-level associate, give Mason Kalfas at Zenith Legal a call today to accelerate your career. Call today, 202-486-3535.
1 ball, 1 strike. The set of the pitch. Swinging a ground ball, base hit right center field for Juan Soto. There it is. Hernandez scores. Ruiz motoring home. The throw in is cut off. It's a 2-run single for Juan Soto. Nationals lead 8-0. They have 7 consecutive hits. And for Soto, just his 3rd hit this season with a runner in scoring position. RBIs 12 and 13, and maybe a little bit of a weight lifted off his shoulders.
So with Soto, he bats 3rd on Sunday afternoon. He goes 1 for 5 with that 2-run single. The 6-run 4th, Soto had a 2-run single to right center to put the Nats up 8-0. Is it coincidence or is it something more that just hours after Juan Soto rather tellingly said in a postgame press conference, I've been feeling kind of weird. I've been working a lot on my swing. He's been struggling. That we see this change, and that's something that some have suspected, that he doesn't love batting second, all of a sudden changes the next day to him batting 3rd. Is that coincidence, or do you think that there's something more to that?
I don't think it was a reaction to what he said to us after the game. I think Davey was already thinking about these possibilities of what can I do differently and when would I decide to make that move or not. And I think it had more to do with what he was seeing himself over the course of the last several games. And, he has his own conversation with Soto. I don't think Juan is telling us something that he doesn't also say to Davey or hadn't even said previously to him. So I think it has more to do with that. Again, it definitely had a lot to do with how good Ruiz has looked lately, which gave him the justification for putting him in the 2nd spot. I think Davey, I don't think we give him enough credit. Like, he is a smart guy who looks at the numbers and has people who give him the numbers. And he understands that, yes, in today's world, it does make a lot of sense to hit your best player second. He talked about it this spring about why he wanted to do that with Soto, and he made the case to Juan of why that would be a good thing for him. But Davey also, as we've talked about, he is a feel guy too. And sometimes something just doesn't feel right. And we say, let's try something different and see how that feels. And if it works, and when it does, you don't have to necessarily explain why it worked. You just say it worked. So let's do it. These are human beings. They have thoughts that go through their mind, whether consciously or subconsciously. For whatever reason, maybe hitting third took some pressure off of Soto. And he felt like, hey, I can just be the hitter who I always am. I'm not going to worry so much about it. Now, he didn't have a great game. Like we said, 1 for 5. But it was, a 2-run single. Those are only the third and fourth RBIs he's had this year of players other than himself. So it was fairly significant. And like you said, I think we're going to see it again as long as it seems to work and the team is winning games.
I think it's really funny that in 2022, you can make a statement like there's less pressure batting third than there is batting second, because for years and years and years, that was never the case, right? Your number 2 batter was some no power having slap hitter with speed. And your number 3 batter, that was, one of the studs, one of the horses in your lineup. And things have changed now, man. Number 2 is where it's at, and that has become a real pressure spot for most teams.
Yeah, and I would say in this case, when I'm talking about less pressure, maybe just because Juan has hit third a lot and obviously had tons of success there. So for him personally, I think there are a lot of guys, younger players, if you said, hey, you're going to hit third for us tonight, would feel some semblance of pressure because traditionally that is, the power spot, the big spot in the lineup. But yeah, the game has changed, and you look around the league, a lot of the very best hitters are batting second, but for whatever reason, Soto maybe hasn't been comfortable there. Let's see how he does in the 3 spot now. So far, early result, you had a good positive development from it.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it really is bothering him, it's not worth it to keep him in that 2 spot if he's going to be so much better in the 3 spot. I still would say that that's not the reason why he's been struggling. I think probably whatever issues plagued him in the 2 spot might plague him in the 3 spot. Conversely, whatever he would have done well in the 2 spot, he'll do in the 3 spot. But hey, if it is weighing on him and this is going to get the best out of him, then bat him third. It's not that big of a deal.
Maybe this is this year's home run derby. That was the conveniently fixed his swing last year when, truth be told, it probably wasn't the home run derby that actually fixed him, but it did something to allow him to become the hitter that he knows he can be. If this can have a similar mental effect on him, go for it. Why not? What do you have to lose?
So it's kind of funny with Nelson Cruz in this series. He gets demoted, quote unquote, to number 4 on Sunday afternoon. We've been waiting on this. When was Davey going to put Nelson down in the lineup? Finally does do that on Sunday. Nelson for the series ends up going 5 for 10, which is pretty good, right? But all 5 of the hits end up being singles, right? He's still not hitting for much power. And he ended up exiting the game on Sunday afternoon with a sprained right ankle. He had a weird single in the top of the 4th, a single on which he was thrown out at second base, trying to stretch the hit into a double. So the single came on a fly ball into no man's land in right field. And I guess that's the play on which he suffered the sprained ankle?
Yeah, it sounds like it was sliding into second base as he was getting tagged out. We didn't know anything for a few more innings until his spot came up. He's a DH, so you don't see him take the field or not take the field. So it wasn't until the 7th when Riley Adams came up to hit for him. Now, Davey called it a sprain, which normally you hear that term, you think that's kind of a significant thing. But he also then said that he would consider him day to day. And when asked if they might need to make a move and bring up another position player in time for Monday's game, he said no, he didn't feel like that was going to be necessary. Now, let's see. Things can happen, over the next 24 hours that could change that. Maybe they decide just for insurance reasons, let's have somebody else here in case we need him. And let's remember, Nelson Cruz is 41 years old. Injuries maybe not heal as quickly as they would otherwise. And they've been playing with a short bench for a while now. It does kind of leave you susceptible. It didn't matter in this game because they were comfortably ahead. But when you're using your backup catcher now to replace your DH, if anything were to go wrong, you're kind of up a creek a little bit. You only had 2 other guys on your bench at that point. I feel like personally, and maybe they aren't comfortable there yet, maybe it'll end up blowing up in their faces if they did this, but I feel like they don't at the moment need 9 relievers. The starters have been doing enough, and we keep talking about how relievers are not being used as much as they probably should be. I think they'd be all right reducing 1 man from the bullpen and carrying an extra bench player, but we'll see. That doesn't seem to be a priority for them right now.
No, and Davey still is doing the thing of not allowing relievers to go for like 2 innings. I mean, this game on Sunday afternoon was the perfect opportunity for that. You see Josh Rogers relieve Aaron Sanchez, who we'll get to momentarily, and Rogers throws 1 1/3 scoreless innings, like in a pseudo blowout. I mean, I know it was kind of sort of not totally out of hand, but why not have Josh Rogers throw 3 innings? Like, would that have been the end of the world? The Nats don't have an off day until June 6th. I mean, this game on Sunday seemed like the perfect opportunity to get guys rest, and instead we saw Davey end up using 4 relievers in the game.
So the only thing there, I agree with you, and just let Rogers at least complete the 2 innings at that point. I don't know that Steve Cishek needed to pitch in this game because he's gotten consistent work, including on Saturday, so that's back-to-back games for him. The thing is, and we've talked about this, I think this was one of those days where it didn't matter what the score is. Kyle Finnegan and Tanner Rainier were going to pitch no matter what. They needed the work. And you can say, well, you got to keep saving them for a save situation. Well, that save situation never seems to come, and they are facing the Dodgers next, so God knows if that's going to happen, if they're going to hold a late lead. So even though they're up 6 runs, I kind of understand why he pitched Finnegan and Rainey in the 8th and the 9th. However, if, as we discussed the other night, he had used one of them in a 2-0 game when they were trailing, maybe he wouldn't have felt the need to then have to use them both in a more lopsided game. So there's a domino effect of all these things from one day to the next. And we'll see now, Monday and Tuesday, do the situations arise where you want them? And are they less available than they would have been otherwise because they pitched in an 8-2 game on Sunday?
Yeah, one thing leads to another. Because you haven't been pitching them, you feel compelled to pitch them in a game in which you didn't need to pitch them. And now, no off day until June 6th, at least a scheduled off day. Maybe there's a rainout coming up. But yeah, it can get a little tricky with something like that. Few other things with the offense. So Josh Bell was down to the number 5 spot on Sunday afternoon. Bell went hitless in a game in which the Nats scored 8 runs, had 14 hits. The struggles of Josh Bell continued. 0 for 5. He left 4 men on base. He, in the series, goes 0 for 12 with a hit by pitch. He is 0 for 19 with 1 walk over his last 5 games. Hasn't had an extra base hit since May 7th. Has Davey talked at all about what he's seeing with Josh Bell or what might be happening here? I mean, we know he can be streaky. We know that he was very good up until the slump. But, man, he's in a real rut right now.
Yeah, and he knows it. Josh talked about it after Saturday's game and said he's got to take responsibility himself for the struggles of the team offensively when that has been the case and they're scoring 1 or 2 runs per night. And he's always been a streaky hitter. We know that about him. That's his track record. And the hope was that he could minimize the bad streaks, the slumps. Now, not 0 for 19 is not good, but it's also not 6 weeks like we saw to start last season. So the hope would be he gets out of this pretty quickly. But I think that's among the reasons you mentioned earlier about Nelson Cruz getting bumped down. The fact that he only moved Cruz to 4 and actually moved Bell, who's been their best hitter this year, all the way down to 5, says to me there was an acknowledgement that Josh is not really at his best form right now. Maybe that'll change here at some point. But yeah, I mean, you step back and you say, this is where it's interesting because when a guy gets off to a terrible start to the season, you establish this narrative of, oh, he's having a bad year, even though he may have been really good for a while, but just takes a long time for the numbers to come back, which is what happened with Josh last year. You get off to a great start like he did, and you sort of ignore the slump because the overall numbers still look good. But when you actually break it down, you realize, no, he's in a little bit of a legitimate slump here. And I think Davey is acknowledging that, and we'll see if that lasts or if he can get it back. You would hope he can get it back and that this isn't a prolonged thing because for a lot of reasons, it's good for him, it's good for the team, it's good for everyone if Josh Bell can have a sustained, really start to finish great year for them.
Yeah, I mean, he was emerging as a nice trade chip. It's kind of funny how it played out. The slump started as we were right around the 1-year anniversary of the surge beginning last year. It's almost like he struck a deal with the devil of, hey, for the next 365 days, you'll be on fire, but then it's going to end. And poof, it's almost like it ended for Josh Bell. So we'll see if he gets going. Hey guys, it's Al Galdi for Window Nation. The Window Nation graduation sale continues. If your old windows are failing or just not making the grade, here's a homework assignment. Call Window Nation and get to the head of the class with 0% financing for 5 full years. Yes, 5 years, 60 months, and get 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy. Window Nation windows are the best. Window Nation has installed over 1 million windows in over 150,000 homes, with 96% of those homes needing no follow-up service. You get 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, and you make no down payment and pay no interest for 24 months. Increase the value of your home with Curb Appeal. Save money on your energy bills by replacing your old inefficient windows with new energy-efficient Window Nation windows. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. And make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's 866-90NATION or windownation.com. And make sure that you tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
On his fly to left in the 7th, swinging a ground ball left side. Franco has it. He plants. He throws on to Bell, and a Curly W's in the books here in Milwaukee.
This doesn't matter that much, but I'm just curious about this. Dee Strange-Gordon was an starting shortstop each of the final 2 games in the series. Alcides Escobar was not. Strange-Gordon is kind of a fun guy to watch. I mean, it's unconventional. He does find a way to get on base. His hits don't always look pretty. He can be a little too flashy in the field, but, he had that RBI bunt single in a 6-run fourth. Do you think that we're perhaps seeing Dee Strange-Gordon overtake Escobar as the number 1 shortstop, or at least we're seeing more of a timeshare at shortstop, or do you think Escobar is still the Nats' primary shortstop?
I would call it maybe more of a timeshare than anything. I think you'll still see Escobar start more games. I'm going to say 3 out of 5, while Strange-Gordon gets 2 out of 5, something like that. But I actually did ask about it afterwards, and Davey said that there was nothing physically wrong with Escobar. Back-to-back days having off, which is unusual for him, and he dealt with a finger injury a little while back, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Yeah, you're going to try some different things, and we know Escobar, what he's done for them this year or hasn't done for them this year, so why not try somebody who brings a little energy like Dee Strange-Gordon? A great squeeze bunt, the first of the 2 back-to-backs. Some interesting plays in the field. He also had one attempted to do something that he shouldn't have tried to do on what could have just been an easy out at first, and he tried to turn a crazy double play and get an out at second, and it didn't work against him, and that's why he's not really an everyday big league shortstop. But right now, given Escobar's struggles, if you find a matchup that you like, go ahead and put Strange-Gordon in there. But I would think it's at most a 50-50 split in playing time right now, and probably still leaning more towards Escobar than Strange-Gordon as far as starts.
If you are still curious about Luis Garcia, he's still doing quite well at AAA Syracuse, but we know that we should not be holding our breath for him to be summoned back up to the majors. So Aaron Sanchez was the Nats starting pitcher on Sunday afternoon. He was decent, especially by Aaron Sanchez standards. But boy, in a game like this, you'd love to see your starter chew up at least 7 innings, right? I mean, you have a nice lead, just go out, work quickly, throw strikes, record outs. Sanchez ended up allowing 2 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 7 hits, a homer, and 6 singles. He issued 2 walks. He only had 1 strikeout, and he didn't throw strikes, which is something that he does normally do. He doesn't get strikeouts, but he normally does throw strikes. But Sanchez on Sunday, 89 pitches, just 46 strikes versus 43 balls. Did you think that Sanchez might pitch more because of the score, or because it's Aaron Sanchez, you get him out after 5 innings?
No, I think you get him out of there because, let's be honest, I think they were fortunate to get through those 5 innings with only 2 runs scoring. Going into the 5th, he actually had thrown more balls than strikes overall. That's not anything you ever want to see, and yet had a 0 on the scoreboard to that point. The 2 runs came in the 5th when he did put it over the plate a little bit more. What bailed him out in this game, let's be honest, was the double play ball. He got 3 of them in 4 innings and could have had 4 of them if they're able to turn another one that Cesar Hernandez had trouble making the exchange at second base. You could see Sanchez was kind of emotional upset when they couldn't turn that one. So that was his best friend in this game, and really the only reason I think that he was able to avoid significant damage. And it is a good reminder that we look at the final pitching lines, but also look at how they pitched. There have been a bunch of games lately we've talked about Josiah Gray, Eric Fetty, even Patrick Corbin at times. You look at the final line and say that wasn't all that impressive, but when you really break down the start, you say there were a lot of good stuff in there. And I think this is the opposite case. The final line looks decent, but I actually think Aaron Sanchez did not pitch all that great. I don't think he looked that great. I think he was helped out by getting ground balls at the right time. And he even got, can you believe this? This was where I knew the opposite was happening on this day. They actually got an opposing batter runner called out for going out of the baseline to first base. That's the Trey Turner play. That only happens to the Nationals, right? No, on this day, it actually happened to their opponent. And that's how I knew some crazy Costanza opposite magic was going on in this game.
And that's so funny because the Nats are about to see Trey Turner in that series against the Dodgers. Who would have expected something like that? Aaron Sanchez now over 6 major league starts for the Nats this season, has an ERA of 7.16. But here's my favorite Aaron Sanchez stat. He has totaled 27 2/3 innings and a mere 13 strikeouts. That's hard to do in 2022. We talk so often about wanting to average a strikeout per inning. He's averaging less than a half of a strikeout per inning. That is a very difficult way to make a living as a pitcher in MLB in 2022. I knew the strikeout total was low, but with him having just 1 strikeout on Sunday, I said, let me look this up. 13 strikeouts in 27 2/3 innings. Max Scherzer used to get 13 strikeouts in an outing. This guy has 13 strikeouts over 6 starts this season.
I think it's called pitch to contact, Al. Isn't that the philosophy?
Yeah, that is wow. That is tough. Well, speaking of getting strikeouts, at his best, Stephen Strasburg gets strikeouts. And we finally on Sunday got news that we have been waiting for quite some time. And that is that Stephen Strasburg and Joe Ross are set to begin minor league rehab assignments. It's so interesting how these two guys' recoveries are like 2 peas in a pod right now. Strasburg and Ross are like Siamese twins. Their recoveries are tracking along the same lines, and each guy is going to begin his minor league rehab assignment on Tuesday night. Like, I don't know if the Nats are doing this. It's like when you have twins and you dress them up to look the same. I don't know if the Nats are doing this to be cute or what, but Strasburg is going to be pitching for Low A Fredericksburg. Ross is going to be pitching for Double-A Harrisburg. What are we looking at here? How long might these minor league rehab assignments last for?
So I think finally, we've been asking all this time, okay, what's a reasonable timetable? When do we think they're going to be back? I think we can finally say with a little more confidence that we have an idea what it's going to be. So they're both going to throw 4 innings or 60 pitches, give or take, on Tuesday. And Davey had previously said that he wants them ideally to get to 6 innings and 90 pitches ultimately before they're activated. Do the math, that's 3 starts each, at least 3 starts each. Now, things can happen and, maybe he has a rough game. And the danger, if you want to call it that, of going on the rehab assignment versus a simulated game is now you're pitching in an actual competitive minor league game, which means if you have 1 rough inning, you got to stay out there or else they have to pull you from the game. In the simulated games, if your pitch count gets high, they can just end the inning right there, pull you off the field, send you back out for the next one. That's the controlled environment of a simulated game. Now they actually have to go out and pitch competitively. So things can happen that may mess it up. But if it all goes the way that you hope it would, you go 4 innings in this one, you go 5 innings in your next one, probably 75 pitches, and then 6 innings, 90 pitches the third time. And then let's see, are they ready at that point? So let's do the math, plan it out. Now, on the 60-day IL, both these guys, so they're eligible. The first day they're eligible is June 3rd. So they couldn't come back before that regardless. June 3rd would be about the date that you would be making your 3rd of those rehab starts. So I'm looking at June 8th, give or take, as probably the soonest that we see them. And so I would guess sometime within that week, June 8th to 15th, maybe they need 1 more rehab start. Maybe they're ready. Maybe one of them is finally ahead of the other and one is ready to go. The other one stays back. I'm looking at that range, June 8th to 15th, somewhere in there, that we're going to see Stephen Strasburg and Joe Ross finally make their 2022 debuts for the Nationals.
Well, June 8th is the 12-year anniversary of Stephen Strasburg's major league debut, so that would be fitting. Strasburg, of course, is coming off the season-ending surgery last July 28th to address his neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome. We know the challenges of that. Davey Martinez on March 23rd saying that the goal was for Strasburg to make 20 to 25 starts this season. We know that that's not happening, but if he can make 10 to 15, I think you take that and run with that if you're the Nats. With Joe Ross, Strasburg is under contract for another 4 years after this season. He's not going anywhere. He's untradeable with that contract. Ross, his time of being under team control ends after this season. He's coming off having that arthroscopic surgery to remove a bone spur in his right elbow. Still looming over him is the potential for him to need Tommy John surgery. And like I said, after this season, he's a free agent. What do you think they're thinking with Joe Ross? Do you think that they think that, hey, maybe he can be like a number 4, number 5 starter for us moving forward? Do you think that they're just kind of playing out the string with Ross and there are no plans beyond this season? We know where things are with Strasburg. With Ross, I think it's a little trickier.
Yeah, it is a lot trickier, as a matter of fact. I think what you do is they've done everything they can to get him healthy and get him now back out on the mound again. And then once he is back, you put him out there every fifth day and you see what you have. In a perfect world, he pitches well enough that you maybe say at some point, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're going to be a free agent, but we think you're healthy. We think you can still help us out here. Here's an offer for next year. 1-year deal, something like that. And maybe he takes it because he's familiar with the organization. And chances are, unless he just pitches lights out the rest of the way, he's probably not going to have a huge market as a free agent, probably not going to get a guaranteed multi-year deal. So maybe there's something there. If he doesn't do it, if he either gets hurt again or is just kind of the old Joe Ross, spin the wheel, make the deal, don't know what you're going to get, any given time he takes the ball, then he probably becomes a free agent. And at that point, the Nationals have to decide, do we take another shot at him? Maybe it's on a minor league deal, so it's not guaranteed, something like that. There's a lot of different ways that one can go. But I think that's why there's been motivation on both sides of that equation to get him out there and to go through this rehab, because this is his career we're talking about now. If he doesn't pitch this year or barely pitches this year, that, really hinders his chances of having another opportunity in 2023, whether it's here or somewhere else. So I think, in Joe's mind especially, he really wants to go out there and get as many starts as he can and make the case for himself, whether it's coming back to D.C. or going somewhere else next year.
Yeah, it's his age 29 season. It might feel like he's older. He's still not even 30. He's been around a while, but he's not even 30 yet. So there might be some mileage left, but we know that the days of expecting him to become like a number 2 starter in your rotation, those days are done. But could he maybe be a number 4, number 5 for you? Possibly. We'll see. But a lot of uncertainty with both guys. But with Strasburg, like I said, he's not going anywhere. No one's touching him with that contract. With Ross, things are much more up in the air. You tell us what you think. You can hit us up on Twitter at @Nats_chat. You can email the podcast as well, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like to sponsor the Nats Chat Podcast. You can get yourself a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt by going to natschatpodcast.square.site. You can do as some good friends of the podcast recently did. Brandon from Madison, Wisconsin, he and his wife each wore a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt this weekend in Milwaukee. So we had our friend Tim Murray wearing a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt in Milwaukee. We had Brandon and his wife wearing Nats Chat Podcast t-shirts in Milwaukee. The pod was taking over American Family Field over this weekend. I love that.
I mean, we thought that the highlight of the weekend was Vanilla Ice and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. No, the highlight were all the Nats Chat t-shirts spotted in the crowd. And for a home team here that wears blue and gold, the red stood out. You could see the red in the ballpark. You definitely knew where they were.
If only we could have gotten Ice and maybe 2 out of the 4 Ninja Turtles to wear Nats Chat Podcast t-shirts. That would have been beautiful.
What a missed opportunity. I can't believe I didn't think of trying to pull that off on Saturday.
Yeah, well, we can do it. We can do it next time. But maybe, Leonardo and Donatello, I'm not sure which of the 4 would have been willing to do it, but we could have found 2, I'm thinking, to wear the t-shirt, but we'll figure it out next time. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chatter, courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Next up for the Nats, the National League leading Los Angeles Dodgers at Nationals Park. Boy, this schedule has not done the Nats any favors. We'll see what happens this week against Trey Turner and the Dodgers. Until next time, we thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Runners second and third, 2 out, 5-0 Nationals, bottom of the first. Swinging a fly ball, left field toward the line. Ozuna on the run.